Hello guys, welcome back. So here we go. We will be doing the reading 44 now, the next one. And from here, equity really takes on. I mean, up tak whatever we discussed was more generic in the sense ki we discussed about the markets, market data, market practices, the dealers, this, that, perception in the market, the psychological theories in the market, right? Anomalies and stuff. Indices में भी सब कुछ आता है. But now this takes a turn. Okay, now this becomes a core equity turn, and in this particular reading we will see overall the overview on equity securities, right? कि क्या क्या what are the different within equity also there are different kinds of securities, right? It is not only the common equity or something, right? There are a lot of caveats to that कि कितने different types of equity securities है, what are the risk return profiles, what is good, what is bad, what is advantages, what is disadvantages, and whatnot, right? So yeah, without wasting any time, let us just dig into this. So yeah, overview of equity securities. So first, let us understand the types of equity securities, right? Broadly, there are two types of equity securities. Within that, there are subtypes. So वो एक के बाद एक we will see. So don't worry about that. So the first type of equity security is common shares. Okay, this is the most common thing that we see, you see everywhere, right? Markets में जो share trade करते हैं, Reliance, Infosys, Tata, whatever it is, right? These are all common shares, right? Or in general, whatever stocks that you buy in your demat and keep, right? These are nothing but the common shares. Okay, that those are called as the common shares. अब वो common क्यों बोला जाता है? Common इसलिए because these shares have the potential to give the highest return, but also come with a lot of discomfort. Discomfort in the sense that in the event anything falls bad, okay, in the event of an in a negative event, basically, okay, common shareholders will be the last ones to be catered to, right? Let's say agar company डूब गई, if the business is not doing well and the company is kind of contemplating a liquidation or something, then जो एंड में बचेगा ना, कुछ भी छोटा मोटा जो कुछ भी बचेगा वही मिलेगा कॉमन शेयर होल्डर्स को. सो बेसिकली कॉमन शेयर होल्डर्स आर द रियल रिस्क टेकर्स इन अ कंपनी. And that is why when a company succeeds, okay, when a company really succeeds and grows by its valuation, by its overall market cap, right, the ones who advantage the most from that are the common shareholders, right? High risk, high return, correct? तो क्या है पहले ये देखते हैं, जो मैंने बताया वही है फर्स्ट सेंटेंस, राइट? रेसिडुअल क्लेम ऑन फर्म्स एसेट्स इफ द फर्म इज लिक्विडेटेड. Okay, so basically, if the firm is liquidated, it has the last residual value. It gets the last. First, the employees get paid. Okay, I'll tell you the hierarchy. First, the employees get paid. Okay, then moreover the debt holders will get paid. Then moreover the preference shareholders will get paid. Preference shares पे we will come. Okay, and then comes the common equity. So they are the last people. ठीक है, बच्चा कुचा माल जो मिलेगा वो उनको मिलेगा. Simple, right? So residual claim on firm's assets if the firm is liquidated. They have voting rights, okay, can vote by proxy. So so common shareholders, because they are taking so much risk, okay, because they are taking real ownership of the company, they also hold voting rights, right? So if a company is taking any material decision, then they are a part of it, they vote for it, okay. बाद में उसका majority होगा नहीं होगा, that will decide if the final uh, clearance of that particular thing happens or not, right? And beneficiary of capital gains, correct? So basically these shareholders are not here to just earn dividends. Okay, dividends is just one part of the return, and it is not a very significant or a dominant part of the return. Common shareholders are there on the board for one thing, and that is capital gains. They want the company to create value. Okay, they want the company to grow in terms of its metrics, create value, show better market cap, and then they will get good capital gains, right? 100 का शेयर लेके 200 में बेचेंगे तो 100% रिटर्न आएगा. तो कॉमन शेयर होल्डर्स का इंटरेस्ट सबसे ज्यादा उसमें होता है, राइट? द ग्रोथ ऑफ द स्टॉक, द ग्रोथ ऑफ देयर होल्डिंग्स, राइट? Within common shareholding, there are two concepts. One is statutory voting. Statutory voting is a very clear cut voting, जिसमें basically one member, one vote, one shareholder, one board member. Basically कहने का मतलब ये है that one common, let's say if I am a common shareholder, okay, let's say I am a common shareholder in Reliance, for example, okay, then I can only vote I can only have first of all one vote. Okay, so one vote per share, by the way, right? If I'm holding 100 shares, तो उस हिसाब से basically मिलता है. So I can have one vote, and that one vote can only go to one board member. Okay, so if there are multiple board members and or candidates for the board, okay, मैं एक के लिए ही उसमें वोट कर सकता हूँ. I cannot do more. When it comes to cumulative voting, what happens is, I'll tell you. Basically statutory में ये होता है that let's say there is board member A, board member B, board member C. ठीक है, ये तीन है. मैं तीनों को ही मैं तीनों को ही स्टैट्यूटरी में एक एक और एक वोट दे सकता हूं. ठीक है, मैं तीनों को ही एक वोट दे सकता हूं. दिस इज स्टैट्यूटरी. व्हाट हैपेंस इन क्यूमुलेटिव? क्यूमुलेटिव में ऐसा है दैट यार, अगर इफ मोनिल, लाइक, the max I can give in statutory is 1 to any board member. But let's say if Monil feels that no, yaar, the board member C is someone who I really like and I want that particular board member to shine. So in a cumulative voting practice, what Monil can really do is this. Just a second. Monil can basically combine votes for ABC. मोनिल के पास 3 वोट थे, बट स्टैट्यूटरी में ये है वो तीन में से जितने मेंबर्स है, ओके, इतने वोट थे मोनिल के पास. स्टैट्यूटरी में ए, बी और सी तीन मेंबर के लिए 3 वोट थे, राइट? अब वो हर मेंबर को एक ही वोट दे सकता है. सो ज्यादा से ज्यादा मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? लेट्स से इफ आई लाइक सी, इन स्टैट्यूटरी व्हाट आई कैन डू इज आई कैन गिव 0 वोट्स टू ए, आई कैन गिव 0 वोट्स टू बी, बट सी को एक वोट दूंगा. तो ठीक है, सी को वोट जाएगा. इन अ क्यूमुलेटिव वोटिंग व्हाट आई कैन डू इज आई हैव ए, बी एंड सी का एलिजिबल एक वोट. आई कैन नॉट, मैं क्या करूंगा, ए को वोट नहीं दूंगा, बी को वोट नहीं दूंगा, बट सी को एक वोट तो दूंगा, बी के नाम का भी एक दूंगा और ए के नाम का भी एक दूंगा और 3 दूंगा, राइट? सो बेसिकली दैट बिकम्स अ क्यूमुलेटिव वोटिंग. व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज दैट इन अ स्टैट्यूटरी वोटिंग, my powers as a shareholder are limited, where I can only vote one, where I can only have one vote for one board member. In a cumulative one, I can remove those people that I don't like, और उनके वोट का हिस्सा भी मैं इनको दे सकता हूँ. So I can give 3 votes, right? So that's what I can do. So this is the difference between statutory voting and cumulative voting. Now this all depends कि how the company is formed and what are what is the procedure in the company's charter, right? So it all depends. So some companies have statutory voting boards, some companies have cumulative voting. Now that depends. Okay, as simple as that. That sometimes also depends on the class of shareholders, right? Like a Monil and versus a Rakesh Jhunjhunwala will have difference in terms of the rights they carry or the hold they have on the board. Why not, right? So that is that can also be the case. So yeah, that's what this particular part says. May have different classes with particular exclusive privileges for seniority, right? Someone who is holding, like for example, Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala has been holding shares of Titan since ages now, okay, and significant chunk. He has been a loyal shareholder to Titan. He has been a real owner in that sense. And in which case, the point here is that he should get more privilege and seniority, right? Vis-a-vis someone like me who will maybe enter Titan and exit Titan within months, weeks, or years, right? So that is the case. So yeah, clear statutory. I will maybe just make something here, right? So statutory में क्या होता है? Statutory में let's say there are A, B, and C board members. ठीक है? Per board member there is, for example, एक vote. Okay. पर बोर्ड मेंबर एक वोट है. अब लेट्स से इफ आई लाइक सी, आई कैन गिव वन वोट ओनली टू सी, और ए और बी को अगर मुझे, इफ आई डोंट लाइक ए एंड बी, आई वोंट वोट. ठीक है, आई विल चूज नॉट टू वोट, बट दिस इज द मैक्स आई कैन डू. ओके, दिस इज अबाउट स्टैट्यूटरी. क्यूमुलेटिव में क्या कर सकता हूं मैं? क्यूमुलेटिव में लेट्स से, ओके, राइट, सो दिस इज बेसिकली, दिस इज, हाँ, जस्ट अ सेकंड. Depends if I wish to vote, right? For everyone, it depends if I wish to vote. But in cumulative, I can coming, let's say Monil likes C. Monil likes C. तो ज्यादा से ज्यादा मैं ए और बी का मेरा वोट हटा दूंगा, ओके। बट सी में मैं क्या बोलूंगा, ए को मुझे एक वोट देने को दे रहे थे, बी को एक वोट देने को दे रहे थे और सी को दे रहे थे, मैं तीनों का मिला के सी को दूंगा, तीनों तीन वोट सी को दूंगा, बिकॉज नाउ माई होल्ड इंक्रीजेस। सो द बेनिफिट ऑफ अ क्यूमुलेटिव वोटिंग स्कीम इज दैट the person whom I like, I can do, I can do all the things within my powers to give highest number of votes to that particular person to come on the board, right? So that is the difference. Now, preference shares. So preference shares, by the name, if you can understand preference, right, उसमें थोड़ा preference मिलता है. Basically you get a preference over common shares. Okay, these are also shares, but these have preferences over common shares, and that is why it is generally considered as a hybrid instrument, which is between debt and equity. Debt जितना risky, okay, debt से थोड़ा ज्यादा risky, equity से थोड़ा कम risky. That is how a preference share is made. Okay, so it has features of both. Basically features of both common stock and debt. Pays dividend, ठीक है, इसमें dividend होता है, इसमें main component ही dividend होता है, इसमें there is no capital gain here, right? So pays dividend, priority after debt holders. So in event of liquidation, if the company is going through a rough patch and going through liquidation, first of all, as I said, first the money will go to employees, then it will go to अपना debt holders, then it will come down to preference shareholders, then it will go to common shares. तो in that pecking order थोड़ा सा फायदा है, right? Can have call or put options. uh, a, a preference shares can, just like how a common share also can, right, can have call or put options. अब call or put option क्या है वो derivatives में आपको पता है, तो आपको वो समझ में आ जाएगा. But in any case, a callable preference share is basically a right which the company has, okay, where they can buy the shares from you. A puttable preference shares is a right that the investor has, that you at any point of time, based on the strike price that is fixed, you can you have the right to पुट और सेल दोज शेयर्स, राइट? मैंने आपको ये बता दिया, ये आपको कनेक्ट तब होगा जब आप डेरिवेटिव्स का वीडियो देखोगे, ओके? सो डोंट गेट हाइपर अबाउट दिस. You will see the derivatives video and you will easily understand what I even mentioned. Yeah. Usually no voting rights, right? Because see, these people are not participating in the success story of a company per se, right? They are not the value creator. Okay, they have given the capital. Okay, they've given the flexibility that हाँ, don't treat me as debt. ऐसा नहीं है कि हर महीना आपको मुझे EMI देना है. But that also doesn't mean that they are giving so much flexibility that they don't ask for dividends. They are here in between. Simple. They are a bridge. So there are different types of preference shares. One is cumulative preference shares, which has fixed dividends. Okay, basically, cumulative preference shares में ऐसा होता है that let's say हर साल company ABC is paying dividends. Okay, तो हर साल company ABC let's say pays a dividend payout ratio of, for example, 8% to preference share. Okay, वो फिक्स डिविडेंड्स देता है हर साल. अब लेट्स से ये साल कंपनी एबीसी ने प्रॉफिट बनाया तो उसने डिविडेंड्स दिया, नेक्स्ट 2 साल प्रॉफिट नहीं बनाया तो नहीं दिया. ओके, नहीं प्रॉफिट नहीं बनाएगा तो नहीं देगा, राइट? डिविडेंड इज नॉट इंटरेस्ट गाइस. ओके, what happens in debt and interest, the company can be loss making, the company can be profit making, but then they have to pay the interest. Debt holders are not going to waive off that, right? But preference shareholder will do. But what happens in a cumulative preference shares is that it has fixed dividends, but any cumulative dividend not paid must be paid before paying dividend to common shareholders. Okay, basically, लेट्स से आपने, लेट्स से कंपनी ने हमें एक साल डिविडेंड पे किया, हैप्पी. नेक्स्ट 2 years द कंपनी डिड नॉट पे डिविडेंड्स, इट डिड नॉट डू वेल और वट एवर इट इज, so it did not pay dividends. In the third year it has done well, okay, and now it is planning to give dividends to common shareholders also. Okay, so it can only and only pay dividends to common shareholders before paying us. Okay, so basically they first have to pay us. Let's say if we are the preference shareholders, the cumulative preference shareholders, we first should be given the preference. हमको पहले dividend मिलेगा and then it will flow to the common shareholders. So fixed dividends, any cumulative dividend not paid must be paid before paying dividend to common shareholders. Basically, अगर मैंने ये साल dividend लिया था, 2 साल नहीं लिया था, तीसरे साल पे वो कॉमन शेयर होल्डर्स को देना चाहते हैं, तो पहले उनको मेरा जो बाकी है डिविडेंड क्यूमुलेट होके पड़ा है, ओके, जो 2 साल नहीं दिया, जो क्यूमुलेटिव होके पड़ा है, पहले वो पे करना पड़ेगा, देन दे कैन डू. ओके, just to again give you a visual show. Let's say year 1 5 rupees was paid at dividend, year 2 nothing was paid, year 3. ओके, बेसिकली ईयर 2 में भी 5 पे करना था बट नहीं किया. ओके, देयर इज अ फिक्स डिविडेंड पे आउट, ठीक है, बट नहीं किया. ईयर 4 में कंपनी इज प्रॉफिटेबल एंड इट वांट्स टू पे द कॉमन शेयर होल्डर्स. बट before paying the common shareholders, the company will have to pay 15 टू प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर. पहले प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स का पेट भरो, बाद में कुछ बचेगा तो कॉमन शेयर होल्डर्स को दो. राइट, सो दिस इज अबाउट द क्यूमुलेटिव प्रेफरेंस. इट क्यूमुलेट्स, राइट. क्यूमुलेटिव प्रेफरेंस शेयर्स का मतलब ये है, if you are not able to give dividend it is okay, but the moment you are able to give dividends you will accumulate the previous dividends, the previous unpaid dividends, right? You will accumulate the previous unpaid dividends and pay it first. Then comes non-cumulative preference shares. Okay, there is no accumulation of dividends here. Okay, however, dividends to be paid before common shareholders. Matlab, what is non-cumulative preference shares? Basically, year 1 में कंपनी अच्छा परफॉर्म कर रही थी. लेट मी जस्ट अलाइन दिस. हाँ, ईयर 1 में कंपनी अच्छा कर रही थी, कंपनी ने 5 रुपए का डिविडेंड दिया. ईयर 2 में कंपनी अच्छा नहीं कर रही थी, कंपनी ने कुछ डिविडेंड नहीं दिया. ईयर 3 में कंपनी अच्छा नहीं कर रही थी, कंपनी ने कुछ नहीं दिया. ईयर 4 में कंपनी अच्छा कर रही है and now it is planning to pay dividends to common shareholders. So good, fine. First it has to pay 5. First it has to pay only 5, not 15. First it has to pay 5 to the preference shareholders, then it can go and pay it to the common shareholders. This is the meaning of non-cumulative preference shares. Here the preference dividends are not getting cumulated. ऐसा नहीं कि यार पहले का जो कसर बाकी था पूरा करो बाद में नया करो, ऐसा नहीं. इट इज ओके. कंपनी डिड नॉट मेक प्रॉफिट इन द लास्ट 2 years. वी डोंट वांट मनी फॉर दैट. This year it made, we first want money and then it can go and satisfy the common shareholders. So this is a more lenient measure from a investor perspective, right? So this becomes non-cumulative preference shares. Then becomes participating preference shares. What are participating preference shares? If a company has made supernormal profit, बहुत अच्छा profit बनाया, बहुत अच्छा growth दिखाया, ये किया वो किया, so in that case the company will receive extra dividends. Okay, so basically receive extra dividends if the company profits exceed a certain threshold. So a certain threshold is decided. Company पहले से in a participating preference share बोलता है that see, we have a target of 5% net profit. Okay, this is the strike. Okay, we have a target of 5%. Let's keep this as a threshold. 5% PAT, 5% net profit, right? Let's say if we earn a 10%. Okay, तो वो 5% जो एक्स्ट्रा कमा रहे हैं उसका, उसके नाम का थोड़ा एक्स्ट्रा डिविडेंड भी हम आपको देंगे. राइट, इफ वी परफॉर्म वेल देन वी गिव यू मनी. राइट, सो बेसिकली पार्टिसिपेटिंग प्रेफरेंस शेयर्स का मतलब ये है that the investor is given the right to participate. The investor is given the right to participate in the upside of a company, right? So participating में वो होता है. And the last one is a convertible preference shares, where the preference shares can be converted into a common stock, right? So can be exchanged for common stock at a predetermined conversion ratio. पहले से ही, whenever convertible preference shares are issued to the investors, there is a ratio, a conversion ratio that is provided to them, that whenever they wish to, or after a particular vesting period, if they wish to convert their preference shareholding to a common shareholding, okay, to a common shareholding, then this is going to be the conversion ratio. Okay, so the advantage is that it is less risky and higher dividends than equity. Because क्या होता है, if the investor, the investor has the right to decide if he or she wants to convert it into common equity. तो इसमें फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल इट इज लेस रिस्की, इट ऑल्सो पेज अ हायर डिविडेंड. कॉमन इक्विटी से बेटर प्रेफरेंस में मिलेगा डिविडेंड. एंड कन्वर्जन इज कंटिंजेंट ऑन कंपनी परफॉर्मेंस. if I see that the company is performing well, the company's value is growing, okay, growing more than the conversion ratio that is quoted to me, right? Growing more than the conversion ratio that is quoted to me, मतलब ये है कि कंपनी ने कन्वर्जन के नाम पे ऐसे बोला था दैट आपको अगर आज आपके प्रेफरेंस शेयर्स को कन्वर्ट करना है इनटू कॉमन इक्विटी, तो आपका कन्वर्जन होगा एट लेट्स से 100 रुपीज पर शेयर. ओके, बट लेट्स से इफ आई सी इन द मार्केट दैट दैट पर्टिकुलर सेम स्टॉक इज ट्रेडिंग एट 150, तो आई विल ऑब्वियसली गो एंड कन्वर्ट माई प्रेफरेंस शेयर, राइट? कि मैं कन्वर्ट करूं, मेरे 100 रुपए पे हो जाए, मैं 150 में मार्केट पे बेच दूं, मेरा प्रॉफिट भी होगा, मैंने पहले अब तक प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डिंग में मेरा डिविडेंड्स कमाया, अब मैं कैपिटल गेन में कमाऊंगा कॉमन इक्विटी में कन्वर्ट करके, राइट? सो बोथ साइड्स very nice outcome, right? So preference convertible preference share holding gives this advantage, right? So four types: cumulative preference shares we learned, non-cumulative preference shares, participating preference shares, convertible preference shares, right? Now we did this in alternative investments, so the people who have not seen those videos वो थोड़ा देखेंगे तो और broader idea आएगा. Here I am not going to go so deep into private equity because we have covered this at length in alternative investments. So private equity, how is this different than public equity? This is the agenda. Okay, here we are not trying to understand anything but the difference, right? So in private equity, okay, usually these are issued to institutional investors, HNIs, ultra HNIs, family offices, right? ये मैंने आपको बताया. Second, they are less liquid. Okay. By the way, when I say institutional investors or HNIs, ultra HNIs, FOs, you see Shark Tank में sharks. These are nothing but these are the HNI category people or the family office category people, right? Then less liquid, less price discovery, low reporting, less government intervention, weaker corporate governance, high growth, high long-term prospect than public equities, right? Imagine companies that come in Shark Tank, right? First of all, they are less liquid. मतलब वो, let's say if Anupam Mittal is going and buying a stake in a company, okay, is that stake sellable within days, within weeks, within months? नहीं, इतना easy नहीं है. It is not liquid. You need to find rigorous buyers, and then that's how it happens. Vis-a-vis in a stock market, in a public equity, you can easily go to the exchange and liquidate your shares within seconds. Within seconds is the word, right? लेस प्राइस डिस्कवरी, इसका कोई भाव नहीं है, राइट? कोई शार्क बोलेगा 10%, 10% फॉर 1 करोड़, राइट? कोई बोलेगा 5% फॉर 1 करोड़. The price discovery is happening based on your perception of what the value of company is, right? Every shark will quote a different offer, right? सब अलग अलग ऑफर देंगे. कोई 50 करोड़ की वैल्यूएशन देगा, कोई 30 की देगा, कोई 100 की देगा, कुछ भी दे सकता है, राइट? सो price discovery is less and it happens more on the subjective thinking of investors, right? Low reporting, they don't, private equity companies, they don't really need to report, right? Less government intervention because they are not public, because retail investors are not on their cap table, okay? Government is also थोड़ा शांति से, they let them do because new companies कहाँ इतना उनको वो सब दे, right? इतना load दे of reporting and stuff. Weaker corporate governance, now that is the disadvantage, that generally these startup companies or these private companies, their structures are not very well defined. They are not very wide in scope in terms of the way they manage the company, right? Sometimes a very small amount of people manage the company and everything, so that's how it works. कुछ पक्का नहीं रहता है, कोई कभी someone acts as a manager, this that, roles थोड़ा are less defined and stuff. High growth, yes, opportunity for high growth is there because new age products, good products, if they are there, if they enter the market, then definitely. See, क्या है ना, it is a low base effect. If a company is starting at a, let's say, 1 CR revenue, तो 1 से उसको 10 CR पे जाना बहुत quickly जाएगा, growth बहुत फटाफट होगा because there is a lot of market to capture. What happens in public equities is that generally these companies are mature in nature. तो वहां पे कंपनीज का ऑलरेडी सेल्स ही 100 100 करोड़ पे है, 100 200 300 500 1000 20,000, 30,000 करोड़ आसपास का है. तो उस पे ग्रोथ पाना बहुत डिफिकल्ट होता है, राइट? बिकॉज द बेस इज हायर. हाई लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोस्पेक्ट, करेक्ट, इट इज अ लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट देन पब्लिक इक्विटीज, राइट? Now what is venture capital? मैंने आपको वो भी बताया AI में. It is one step below private equity also. Private equity is generally private companies with some business history, with good amount of business history, at least a around a 10-year history. I'm not quoting a number, but in general बोल रहा हूँ, right? Venture capital are very early stage investments. Actually, these are those investments that happen in Shark Tank. In real sense, these are the Shark Tank type of investments, right? Early stage investments in private companies. The stages can be a seed company, a company who is just looking. Seed का मतलब क्या है? A company that looks for a capital where they can get started with. For founders have an idea, but to turn that idea into a product, they need that seed capital. right? Once that seed step is gone, let's say once they make a prototype product and that product has a good product market fit, is when then they go and raise money for the startup phase. इसका मतलब क्या है? प्रोडक्ट हो गया है फिक्स, अब पैसा लाओ, अब इसको कमर्शियली मैं प्रोड्यूस करूंगा, मैन्युफैक्चर करूंगा और बाद में सेल करूंगा, राइट? देन बिकम्स एन अर्ली स्टेज कि चलो माई फर्स्ट लेग ऑफ सेल्स आर डन, my product has been accepted by the market, now please give me more money to scale this, right? And then comes, when the scaling happens, then comes a mezzanine stage. Mezzanine stage is basically that stage, a later stage, where the companies need money for more growth, or basically they need more money to take the company to a next level, a private equity level, or a public equity level, where they can get listed or sell a large chunk to a large institutional investor for large money, right? तो वो मेजनीन स्टेज हो गया. मेजनीन का लिटरल मीनिंग है ब्रिज, राइट? So that is there. Pipe, private investments in public equity. If you would have heard a latest news, right? Abu Dhabi Investment Authority has invested money in Reliance, or there was, let's say abhi Blackstone, right, invested, Blackstone, who is a private equity company, RDI is also a private equity company, right? So Blackstone invested in Apollo Hospital, example, right? So it's not like private equity companies are not interested in public equities. They are, if they feel that a company is early listed. ऐसा हो सकता है, ऐसा देखा है ना, SME listing होता है ये वो, right? Small companies also get listed in the market, ऐसा नहीं है. So if a private equity major sees that, भले ही ये company काफी mature है, but I see a scale in the business, I see a steep scale in the business, they will invest. Reliance में सोचो, इतनी बड़ी company, the largest company in India, RDI has invested, Silver Lake Partners have invested, the large names, Sequoia and everyone are contemplating. इतना कुछ investments का बात हो रहा है. Apollo Hospitals, the largest hospital chain in India right now, right? वहां पे ब्लैकस्टोन ने इन्वेस्ट किया. क्यों किया? बिकॉज दे सी मोर पोटेंशियल. यहां से भी रनवे बहुत लंबा दिख रहा है. दैट इज व्हाई दे हैव डन. सो प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इन पब्लिक इक्विटीज आर ऑल्सो रियलिटी, एंड दैट दे कैन हैपन. ओके, हो सकता है. दैट हैपेंस थ्रू प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट्स. Okay, where investment bankers basically connect the company, a few key investors of the company, to the potential investors who are looking to invest in the company, and then they can decide a price and they can do the deal, right? So pipe can also happen. See, these are different kinds of equity structures that we are evaluating right now. Okay. Foreign equities and equity risk. Okay, so basically now this is turning into international investments, right? Let's say an Indian investor wanting to invest in US, or a US investor wanting to invest in India, and likewise for other countries as well, right? So capital that flows freely across borders without restrictions, but with some flavor of regulation, right? Basically US से इंडिया में पैसा आए, इंडिया से यूएस में पैसा जाए, इंडिया से जर्मनी में पैसा जाए, जर्मनी से इंडिया में पैसा आए. Money can flow. Okay, money can flow into equities, equity shareholding. Foreign investors can come and invest here, but obviously there are some rules, regulations that they need to first adhere to, and then they can do, right? So FIIs are large investors in India, right? In countries like India, China, FIIs have deep are deep invested. So that is the case. Foreign investments are very important for overall growth, stability, forex reserves, right? बाहर का पैसा इंडिया में आएगा. इमेजिन, थिंक फ्रॉम द इकोनॉमिक्स पर्सपेक्टिव. आई हैव टॉट दिस कॉन्सेप्ट इन इकोनॉमिक्स टू यू ऑल. लेट्स से a बाहर का कंपनी that comes to India, okay, let's say a foreign investor, a large, let's say Warren Buffett wants to invest in Indian equities, right? तो क्या करेगा वो? बेसिकली वॉरेन बफे सर लेंगे वहां से पैसे, अपने डॉलर्स, इंडिया में अपने डॉलर्स इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर सकते, राइट? तो डॉलर्स को कन्वर्ट करना पड़ेगा इंडियन रुपीज में, एंड देन इंडियन रुपीज में इन्वेस्ट करेंगे. इससे होगा क्या? वॉरेन बफे विल सेल डॉलर्स टू बाय रुपीज, सेल डॉलर्स टू बाय रुपीज. ओके, बेसिकली वॉरेन बफे विल सप्लाई डॉलर्स, जिससे उसकी वैल्यू गिरेगी, टू बाय इंडियन रुपीज, जिसकी उसकी वैल्यू बढ़ेगी. सो योर फॉरेन एक्सचेंज गेन्स वैल्यू. इंडिया और यूएस का जो रेट है वो स्ट्रांग होगा. At the same time, more foreign money coming into the Indian markets is great. We have more foreign exchange reserves. Reserves काम में आते हैं खराब टाइम पे, right? When you see that a particular situation within the economy is dislocated, okay, ऐसा लग रहा है कि कुछ ठीक नहीं चल रहा है, okay, ओवरऑल वीक हो रहा है हमारे मैट्रिक्स, तो गवर्नमेंट कैन ऑलवेज कम एंड use the foreign exchange reserve to maintain and control that. What are the mechanisms? Economics की बात है. I'm not getting deeper there because we lose the side then, right? Foreign relations from a global standpoint, right? Them investing with us investing with them just enhances the relations, right? You see a lot of US companies or companies across the world setting up factories in India. That is what foreign relations, right? Companies are increasingly turning to foreign investors by either asking for capital or listing in foreign exchanges, right? So either of either companies are raising money from foreign investors, like how Reliance did with Adia, okay, or companies are listing themselves in foreign exchanges where they can again raise money, okay, basically foreign markets में list होके, like for example Infosys, okay, Infosys has a ADR that is there in the US exchange, right? तो Infosys है, वैसे बहुत सारे टाटा की कंपनीज है, right? विप्रो है, a lot of companies are there, that's it there, ठीक है, तो वो सब है, so that's there. So ways of foreign investing, okay, how does one invest into foreign countries, like basically US से पैसा को इंडिया में कैसे डालेगा, इंडिया से यूएस में कैसे डालेगा, there are different ways. The number one and the most easy way is direct investing. So direct investment via private equity, venture capital funds, publicly listed shares, सब कुछ है, right? किसी को अगर लेट्स से इंडिया में अगर पैसा डालना है तो अपना प्राइवेट इक्विटी फंड सेटअप करके यहाँ पे कंपनीज में स्टेक्स बाय कर सकता है, वेंचर कैपिटल फंड सेटअप करके यहाँ पे स्टेक्स बाय कर सकता है, राइट? कुछ नहीं तो डायरेक्टली पब्लिकली लिस्टेड शेयर्स में कर सकता है, एफआईआईज, राइट? दे कन्वर्ट देयर मनी इनटू इंडियन रुपीस एंड इन्वेस्ट इन एशियन पेंट्स, रिलायंस, इन्फोसिस, टीसीएस, राइट? What are the risks here? Risks are illiquidity when it is the private equity venture capital investment. Okay. Higher reporting requirements, right? Currency hedging, currency में fluctuations आएंगे तो currency में profit loss होता रहेगा, तो a lot of hedging needs to be done because fluctuations happen. So when a foreign investor is investing in India, foreign investor is not only taking a equity risk but also a currency risk, right? कि क्योंकि क्या हो जाएगा, लेट से बंदे ने अगर इन्वेस्ट किया इंडिया में, ओके, और इंडिया में इन्वेस्ट किया, उसके बाद ऐसा हो जाए कि रेट्स मूव हो जाए, लेट से डॉलर स्ट्रेंथन हो जाए, इंडियन रुपी वीक हो जाए, जहां पे इन्वेस्ट किया वही वीक हो जाए, समथिंग लाइक दैट, राइट? तो उसका रिटर्न बेसिकली कॉम्प्रोमाइज होगा, तो दैट इज द रिस्क. So hedging is required, right? Required familiarity with foreign regulations, right? So basically, if a foreign investor wants to invest in India, so they need to be familiar with Indian laws, regulations, rules, right? वो नहीं होगा तो उस पे भी खर्चा लगेगा, legal cost लगेगा, currency hedging cost लगेगा, higher reporting requirements, illiquidity can happen. So vis-a-vis, a solution to that is depository receipts. Okay, what is that now? Represents ownership in a foreign firm and are traded in markets of other countries in local market currencies. Example, Infosys ADR listed in the US, right? So let's say if someone does not want to come to India and invest in Infosys, they can directly, let's say US का investor है, वो instead of coming to India, transferring money to India and investing in Infosys, अपने ही स्टॉक मार्केट से इन्फोसिस के एडीआर में ही स्टेक ले लेगा, सेम है. एडीआर इज बेसिकली द सेम थिंग, इट इज जस्ट कन्वर्टेड इनटू डॉलर फॉर्म एंड इट इज इन द डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट फॉर्म. अब डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट में होता क्या है, बेसिकली a person who invests in a ADR, वो ADR basically represents share ownership. Okay, so these depository receipts that are created, depository receipts is just a name. These depository receipts basically carry, they are backed by shares. Okay, तो shares से बनते हैं depository receipts और वो धीरे धीरे करके इश्यू होते हैं यूएस के मार्केट्स में या फिर ग्लोबल मार्केट्स में. अगर लेट्स से इन्फोसिस के बहुत सारे शेयर्स मिला के उसके मैं अगर डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स बनाऊं, ओके, ध्यान से सुनना, अगर मैं इन्फोसिस के, इफ आई मेक अ लॉट ऑफ शेयर्स ऑफ, इफ आई टेक अ लॉट ऑफ शेयर्स ऑफ इन्फोसिस, ओके, and make depository receipts out of it. Okay, basically create units of it. Okay, and plan to sell it in outside markets. If that outside market is US, then it is called as ADR, American Depository Receipt. But if that outside market is anything apart from US, it becomes a GDR, Global Depository Receipt. Okay, so that is the difference. So Infosys का basically stock ही है जिससे बनता depository receipts है. So basically there are a chunk of stocks, they are formed, depository receipts are issued against them, and depository receipts are basically in local currency. So let's say if Infosys ka ADR is trading in the US markets, then it is trading in dollar terms. So wo bhi tension nahi. So for a dollar investor, it is a great thing to enter into Infosys ADR rather than coming to India and investing in Infosys ka shares. But हर शेयर का एडीआर जीडीआर होता है ना, नहीं होता है, राइट? So in if they like some particular companies that are not listed as ADR GDR, they don't have other option but to come and invest likewise alag se, right? That is there. So I, yeah, explained you about depository receipts. Depository receipts can be sponsored or unsponsored. So example से बता रहा हूँ क्या होता है, what is sponsored and unsponsored. Example, if Infosys is involved in the issue of depository receipts, it is a sponsored depository receipt. Okay, with investor voting rights and greater disclosure requirements. Okay, basically Infosys as a company themselves, if they want, if they are involved in the issue of the ADR, okay, if they want themselves to be listed there from in a ADR ka form, if they are involved in the issue, then that becomes a sponsored issue. Uska matlab ye hai, the sponsor Infosys, okay, themselves, if they are interested to get themselves listed in the American markets via a ADR, then it means that it is in their interest to list that. So it is a sponsored ADR where they will fund the money. Okay, they will fund all the legalities and other costs to be issued there. Okay, and that is why it is called as a sponsored DR. And if it is a sponsored DR, uske दो तीन advantages hai, that these sponsored DRs come with investor voting rights and greater disclosure requirements. Basically, if Infosys is the sponsor of this depository receipt, the investor who is investing into the depository receipt, the American investor who is investing into this depository receipt, will get the voting rights. Okay, and if it is sponsored, Infosys will have to disclose a lot of financial statements. So a lot of disclosures and transparency will happen. A lot of reporting requirements will be there. Because see, what will the stock exchange say? The US stock exchange ऐसे बोलेगा, Infosys तुझे खुजली था मेरे यहाँ पे अपना शेयर को लिस्ट करने का, राइट? तो अगर कर रहे हो, अगर आपको इतना मन है, अगर आप मुझे आके सामने से बोल रहे हो, तो आपको हमारे यूएस इन्वेस्टर्स को वोटिंग राइट्स देना पड़ेगा और आपको बहुत डिस्क्लोजर ट्रांसपेरेंसी रखनी पड़ेगी, फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स और वो सब टाइम टू टाइम होना चाहिए. एनी मटेरियल डिस्क्लोजर्स नीड टू बी डन टाइम टू टाइम. However, okay, if Infosys is not someone who is interested in doing that, but overall the regulatory authorities are, the stock exchanges are, okay, then in that case it is a unsponsored DR, it is a unsponsored depository receipt, where in an unsponsored depository receipt there are no voting rights or disclosure requirements or something. Basically the investors will directly have to see the Indian reporting and everything, they will have to follow everything which is being reported from an Indian context and then take a call in the US कि इसमें डालो डालना कि नहीं डालना. They won't get voting rights, they won't get the rights that a sponsored DR will get, right? So that was the difference between a sponsored and unsponsored depository receipt. Global depository receipt is exactly the same thing, okay, as ADR. Basically a Indian share that is trading outside India, okay, but not in the US. US में अगर list हो तो ADR, बाहर list हो तो GDR. Okay, so let's say Axis Bank has a GDR, Mahindra has, L&T has, GL has. These are all GDRs that are listed on the global exchanges. So anything out of America becomes a GDR. Same concept, खाली ADR GDR, same concept, right? Right? American depository receipts मैंने already आपको समझा दिया क्या है. Now, global registered shares. These are literally shares, these are not depository receipts. Okay, these are not shares that are converted into depository receipts and then they get traded. Nah, these are shares. So basically a company gets a multi करेंसी अप्रूवल, मल्टी जुरिस्डिक्शन अप्रूवल, ओके, एक कंपनी है, लेट्स से रिलायंस है, रिलायंस को अगर बहुत सारे देशों से अप्रूवल मिला है कि खुद के स्टॉक एक्सचेंज में लिस्ट करेंगे, तो रिलायंस कैन ट्रेड इन इंडियन रुपीज इन इंडिया, डॉलर्स इन यूएस, यूएन इन चाइना, अलग अलग जगह पे कर सकता है. दीज आर ग्लोबली रजिस्टर्ड शेयर्स. द कंपनी हैज रजिस्टर्ड इट्स शेयर्स अक्रॉस डिफरेंट इकोनॉमीज. To just give you some more color to this, this is the case. A global registered share is a security that can be traded and transferred across applicable borders without the need for conversion. यहाँ पे कोई conversion करने की किसी को जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स में क्या करना पड़ता है, जो स्टॉक एक्सचेंज होता है ना, उसको कन्वर्ट करना पड़ता है. दे कन्वर्ट रुपीज इनटू डॉलर्स, ये करते हैं वो करते हैं, और उसकी डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स बनाते हैं. यहाँ पे क्विक कन्वर्जन है, ओके, यहाँ पे नेचुरल कन्वर्जन है. आईएनआर है तो आईएनआर के हिसाब से, डॉलर है तो डॉलर के हिसाब से, यूएन है तो यूएन के हिसाब से, स्विस फ्रैंक है तो स्विस फ्रैंक के हिसाब से. दिस मींस दैट identical shares can be traded on different stock exchanges in different currency, right? Reliance can trade in Germany, Italy, इधर उधर किधर भी कर सकता है if it is a globally registered share, right? In different currencies. वहां पे डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है. क्या है ना गाइस, डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स में बेसिकली दिस इज, यहाँ पे डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट में ना कंपनी मेहनत नहीं करता है, यहाँ पे दैट एक्सचेंज डज द मेहनत. डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स की बात कर रहा हूँ, जीआरएस की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट ग्लोबली रजिस्टर्ड शेयर. डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स में बेसिकली ये हो जाता है दैट द कंपनी, दैट द स्टॉक एक्सचेंज sees that there is a particular demand for a company like Infosys that people will have, okay, and then what they do, they will buy, okay, ध्यान से सुनना, they will buy a chunk of Infosys का इंडिया का शेयर, ओके, और वो शेयर्स को वो ही अपने आप कन्वर्ट करेंगे, वो ही अपने आप अपने डीमैट में डालेंगे, मैनेज करेंगे, और उसकी सिक्योरिटीज स्ट्रिप करके बनाएंगे, राइट? जीडीआर में ये सब नहीं है. जीडीआर में सिंपल है, इन्फोसिस ट्रेड हो रहा है, चलो यूएस में डाल दो, इसको डॉलर में ट्रेड करा दो, जर्मनी में डाल दो, उसको यूरो में ट्रेड करा दो. गेटिंग माई पॉइंट? जीआरएस ट्रेड्स एज शेयर्स इन डिफरेंट ज्यूरिसडिक्शंस, और डीआर इज नथिंग बट अ कलेक्शन ऑफ शेयर्स जिसका सिक्योरिटीज बनाना पड़ता है, राइट? Because the exchange does that, this company does, okay. GRS is a formality that the company has to do. Reliance, if it wants to register itself as a global share, it will have to do the procedure. DR में the exchanges does that. Now it depends if it is a sponsored or unsponsored. I explained you the differences. ठीक है? Then comes basket of listed depository receipts. Okay, and ETF, that is a collection of depository receipts. Basically different depository, let's say in US देयर आर डिफरेंट डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स. इन्फोसिस का एडीआर है, लेट्स से एक्सिस का है, इसका है, आईसीआईसीआई का, एचडीएफसी का है, ब्ला 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 ब्ला, सबका एडीआर है. सबका एडीआर को मिला के एक ईटीएफ भी तो बन सकता है, जैसे कि निफ्टी का, निफ्टी 50 का एक ईटीएफ है, उस तरीके से एडीआर का भी एक ईटीएफ होगा, वेयर पीपल कैन डायरेक्टली इन्वेस्ट इन अ बास्केट. दे कैन मेक मोर, let's say a US investor who wants to invest in the top notch Indian companies, but they don't want to take the risk of concentration, then they can invest in a basket of depository receipts, okay, where they will be diversified, right? So that is what it is. इतना explanation सब कुछ है नहीं आपके बुक में, ठीक है? So take this lecture seriously and take this lecture from a more knowledge sharing view, because इतना जो मैंने details दिया with live examples, they won't be there in your textbook, right? Then the risk return dynamics of different equity securities. Preferred stock is less risky than common stock, everyone knows now. Cumulative preference shares has less risk than non-cumulative preference shares, correct? Because cumulate करेंगे तो उसमें risk कम है, फायदा है उल्टे का. Puttable features in a common preferred equity are less risky than callable features from an investor's perspective. Basically, put में क्या होता है? Investor gets the right to sell the shares. Call में क्या होता है? The issuer, the company gets the right, right? So right from an investor perspective, if it is there, if I get the right, if I get the put, basically that becomes a less risky thing vis-a-vis a call option, right? Put is always from an investor perspective, call is always from a issuer perspective, right? In equity, okay, derivatives में भी है, but ये सब थोड़ा अलग हो जाएगा, थोड़ा ध्यान से सुनना, ठीक है? Having equity capital helps purchase long-term assets, capital for expansion, better financial ratios, adherence to regulatory requirements. Listed equity helps in cheaper financing for upcoming next months, right? Next rounds, sorry. So basically equity capital का फायदा ये है वो लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल देता है, ठीक है, उसका डेट की तरह कोई मैच्योरिटी नहीं है, right? It can be there for infinite period of time. It gives money for expansion, okay? It makes your ratios better. Why? Because आपके जो financial ratios है वो थोड़े constrain हो जाते हैं if the source of capital is debt, because interest का cost लगेगा, right? And yes, there are overall regulatory requirements भी है जिससे company adhere करेंगी if it has listed out shares, so it is good for investors, right? So that is there. And yeah, cheaper financing फायदा हो जाता है अगर visibility है company के पास. Okay, if the company is visible, is listed, then the required return from investors is always less, right? Then comes market value versus book value. So market value is simple, the stock that gets traded. Okay, Reliance, let's say if it is trading at 3,000 rupees per share, that is nothing but the market value. MVPS, market value per share. Book value is nothing but the assets minus liabilities divided by the number of shares. So yeah, the value in books is very different than the value in market. Q, because book value is based on the current and the past financial statements of a company in the books. Okay. Market value is derived from the market value of the company, and market value of the company, why is it generally more than the book value? Why is it like that? Because in a market value, future expectations are embedded. Okay. A stock that is trading at 3,000, ये 3,000 उसका भाव जो है वो उसके आज के परफॉर्मेंस के लिए नहीं है, वो कल जाके क्या क्या परफॉर्म कर सकता है, वो कल जाके कितना ग्रो हो सकता है, उसके बेसिस पे आज उसको अपना भाव मिल रहा है, राइट? बेसिकली दिस कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ डिस्काउंटिंग द फ्यूचर ग्रोथ, ओके, ध्यान से सुनो, दिस कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ डिस्काउंटिंग द फ्यूचर ग्रोथ to today is nothing, is basically the essence of equity valuation. ठीक है? Whenever it comes about valuation, valuing equities, ठीक है, आगे आगे जो भी मैं आपको रीडिंग 48 में बताऊंगा, ये सब जो वैल्यूएशन हम करेंगे, राइट, दिस इज नथिंग बट द सेम एसेंस, ओके, सेम थिंग, दैट equity valuation का concept ही ये है, it is not concerned with your performance today, it is concerned with your performance tomorrow, with that will be discounted today, right? कल के परफॉर्मेंस के लिए के वजह से इन्वेस्टर्स को रिलायंस का फ्यूचर अच्छा दिख रहा है, इसलिए आज वो लोग 3,000 का भाव दे रहे हैं रिलायंस को, वरना आज और पास्ट के परफॉर्मेंस के बेसिस पे देखने जाओ तो उसकी वैल्यू बहुत कम रहेगी. एंड व्हाट विल बी दैट वैल्यू? बुक वैल्यू, राइट? So market value is the futuristic value discounted to date, right? Yeah. Return on equity. Return on equity is nothing but a measure of management efficiency, net income divided by the book value of equity, right? So higher the better, right? जितना ratio ज़्यादा रहेगा उतना better. But it needs to be examined to see if people are not, you know, ratios में क्या होता है, see, to each its own, सब खुद का मेथोडोलॉजी लगा के इनकम कैलकुलेट कर सकते हैं, बुक वैल्यू कैलकुलेट कर सकते हैं, that needs to be checked. Price to book, this measure price MVPS, basically market value per share, price divided by the book value per share, price to book. Okay, this measure shows the relation between what market perceives versus what the company's past and present fundamental metrics are, right? So future versus the past and present. If it is higher, if the ratio is higher, it shows that the market has confidence in the company. The market looks at the company as a growth machine, and that's how it moves, right? So a higher price to book means the market is pretty optimistic on the company's future prospects. A higher price to book are considered as growth stocks. A lower price to book is considered as value stocks. Those value stocks are those stocks which are very much लो वैल्यूड, ओके, बहुत नीचे है उनका वैल्यू, ओके, यहाँ से अब नीचे जाने का ज्यादा जगह नहीं बचा है. Either the company will falter and finish, or the company will now start its new journey of growth. Correct. So that is why people, a long term investors who have a good eye for a company, ठीक है, जो जो फ्यूचर को पहचान सकते हैं, सोने को देख सकते हैं पहले से, right? They make more money in value stocks because value stocks will first grow and then outgrow, right? तो उसका फायदा मिलता है. A simple exercise on the sums. Okay, this is the sum which is asking us to do a few things to calculate ratios. So yeah, given the following data of O'Grady Industries, calculate the return on average equity, return on equity, okay, and the total market value of equity, the book value per share, price to book. ये जो जो हमने ऊपर देखा वो calculate करने को बोला है. So what is ROE? ROE is nothing but net income 3526. This is the current year, right? So 3526 divided by the average return on average equity, right? So 3526 divided by the average of 18503 and 17143. Oh, right? 3526 divided by the average of 18503 and 17143. That gives a return on equity of 19.8%. Great return, right? Because imagine करो डेट में कितना रिटर्न मिलेगा, 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15, और कितना रिटर्न मिलेगा इक्विटी में, यहाँ पे 98 ऑलमोस्ट 20% रिटर्न मिल रहा है, राइट? What is the market value of equity? Market value of equity is nothing but the number of shares into the current market price. So what is the number of shares? 3710. What is the price? 16.8. Here we go. 3710 into 16.8. Simple. Book value per share. So by the way, you guys should be happy that in level 1, yes, you will be asked such silly questions. So when such silly questions come, फायदा उठाओ उसका और यहाँ पे marks बटोर लो, right? Book value per share is nothing but assets minus liability. And by the way, what is asset minus liability? Equity, correct? So equity 18503 divided by the number of shares 3710, right? So this becomes, right, 18503 divided by 3710. तो हो गया book value per share. Price to book. So price is what? Price per share is 16.8. Book value is 4.99, right? So the company on the basis of its present and past is being valued at 4.99 per share versus the company in from a future potential perspective is right now being valued at 16.8. So look at the price to book 3.4x. This means that the investors in the market are considering this as a growth engine, are looking good future prospects for the company. Okay. So this sums that. And the last part, these are two terms that you will encounter not only in CFA level 1, 2 or 3, but your entire life. So जितना जल्दी इसका मतलब समझ लो उतना easy है. People always interchangeably used required return and cost of equity. Okay. कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी क्या है? कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी बेसिकली द रियल कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी है. मतलब एक कंपनी, हाउ डज अ कंपनी कॉम्पेंसेट इट्स कॉमन शेयर होल्डर्स? डिविडेंड नंबर 1, कैपिटल गेन नंबर 2. तो वो जो डिविडेंड एक्चुअल में दिया और वो जो कैपिटल गेन एक्चुअल में मिला, ये दोनों को मिला के, ओके, जो कंपनी का कॉस्ट बनेगा, मतलब कंपनी के लिए कॉस्ट ही है ना एट द एंड ऑफ द डे. ये डिविडेंड कंपनी किसको दे रही है? इन्वेस्टर को. कैपिटल गेन किसको दे रही है? इन्वेस्टर को. तो जो दैट रियल डिविडेंड एंड द रियल कैपिटल गेन इज कॉल्ड एज द कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी. ओके. And what is the required return on equity? Required return on equity is a return that I require before entering into an investment. मतलब let's say there is a company ABC that I am right now analyzing. Okay. I kind of decide that यार ये कंपनी है ना 10% पे करती है अपने बैंक की लाइबिलिटीज को, बेसिकली अपने डेट पे 10% पे कर रही है. एंड देन आई रन सम नंबर्स एंड देन आई रियलाइज दैट यार ये कंपनी तो रिस्की है. This is a, I mean, it is a great investment, but it is a risky investment as well, right? So if I am investing here, okay, I will only invest here if I require a return of somewhere around 20%. ठीक है, ये रिस्की कंपनी है, तो यहाँ पे 20% अगर मुझे नहीं मिलने वाला है तो मैं इसमें इन्वेस्ट नहीं करूंगा. तो मैं बेसिकली क्या करूंगा? ध्यान से सुनना, ध्यान से सुनना. मैं बेसिकली क्या करूंगा? मैं मॉडल बनाऊंगा, मैं चेक करूंगा कि इसका फ्यूचर ग्रोथ कहां तक पहुंच रहा है, उसको डिस्काउंट करूंगा और फाइनली मेरी इक्विटी वैल्यू निकालूंगा, एंड देन आई विल चेक द करंट प्राइस एंड द इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू. ओके, if let's say the current price is 100, and if let's say, so let's say if I model everything and if I check and if I see that the current price is 100 and the intrinsic value क्या है, मैंने आपको पहले भी बताया है, हम आगे उसको रीडिंग 48 में करेंगे. द वैल्यू that is derived basically, okay, from future prospects, if I see that it comes out at 125, let's say, ठीक है, so that becomes a profit of 25%. If my model gives out a value of 25%, then only I will invest. Okay, basically my required return was 20%. Anything above 20% is I'm okay with it. Okay, at or about 20% is where I'm okay with. 20%, 20.1, 20.2 सब okay, but 19.9% पे I'm not okay, because then that risk is not worth enough. ऐसा होता है ना शार्क टैंक में, यू मस्ट हैव सीन दैट, यू नो, आप ये वैल्यूएशन मांग रहे हो, इसमें मेरा कहां से पैसा बनेगा, राइट? ये बोलते हैं, पता है, शार्क ऐसे बोलते हैं, इसमें मेरा कहां से पैसा बनेगा, इसमें मेरा तो पैसा बनते बनते इतने साल लग जाएंगे, बने ना बने, ये तो बहुत रिस्की है, एट दिस वैल्यूएशन इट डज नॉट लुक वायबल. व्हाई डू दे से? because they are required return on equity and their expectation, basically their required return on equity, and then what they evaluate is not making a math, right? And when that math is not getting made is when investment is cancelled. Okay, उस तरीके से इन्वेस्टर्स कभी भी अपना इन्वेस्टर अप्रूव या डिसअप्रूव करते हैं. ठीक है, सो कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी इज द रियल कॉस्ट. अब लेट्स से ये मेरे मॉडल ने बताया था 125, ध्यान से सुनना, ये मेरा मॉडल बता रहा था 125, बट रियलिटी में 150 बना दिया, तो कंपनी का कॉस्ट 50% हो गया. मेरा रिक्वायर्ड रिटर्न 25% था, बट कंपनी का कॉस्ट 50% हो गया. सो व्हाट इज कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी? कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी इज द रियलिटी and required return is a model number. Okay, this is the point of entry. Okay, this is the decider where I will decide if I want to make an entry into a stock or not, and this is the outcome, and this outcome can be this as well, right? मेरा मॉडल मुझे बता रहा है, वो मुझे डिसीजन लेने को बोल देगा, बट एट द एंड ऑफ द डे व्हाट हैपेंस इज व्हाट हैपेंस, राइट? सो दिस इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी एंड रिक्वायर्ड रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी. ये आगे काम में आएगा, ये जो मैंने इतना टाइम लेके आपको समझाया, ये आपको काम आगे आएगा. सो नाउ इजी. What is the cost of equity? Total return on the shares in the market that includes dividends, capital gains. Cost of equity is the reality and objective. What is required rate of return? The required rate of return by investor to invest in a particular stock. This becomes a subjective matter, to each its own. This is based on individual expectation of a future event. Correct? If cost of equity, okay, if cost of equity or the expected return is greater than the required return on equity, then an investment becomes attractive. Okay? If basically my model says 125 and if I am currently at 100, if this really happens, then investment is okay. Varna, if the model says 116, then the return is not okay. Maza nahi aaya, right? So yeah, guys, this was about the overview of equity securities. A simple, very simple chapter. The reason we have taken more time is that I want to make your roots fundamentals strong. Okay? See you guys in the next videos. Next videos are going to be pretty connecting. Okay? Reading 45, 46, 47 are very connecting. So हम करेंगे. See you guys there. Okay? Thanks.